My son said, "We scheduled goodbye tours of your house while you're still here." I didn't ask what he meant. I just walked to the hall closet, took the price tags I used for church rummage sales, and started with the thing he valued most: his high school jersey, still framed on my wall. It sold for $12.50. The man who bought it asked if I was sure. "It's signed," he said, tracing the faded name with a crooked finger. "I'm sure," I told him. That was on a Tuesday. By Friday afternoon, the garage was empty, the living room stripped bare, and 2 folding tables stood by the porch with labeled boxes: glassware, trophies, misc. A sign in the yard read, "Living Estate Sale. All must go." I hadn't asked permission. I hadn't given notice. I simply unlocked the door and started letting people in. When Kevin came by Saturday morning with 2 young couples in tow, it was already too late. The kitchen clock he loved? Gone. His chess set? Gone. The guitar he never quite learned to play? Sold to a college boy who smiled when I told him it still had 1 broken string. He walked through the hallway like he didn't recognize the place. "What the hell is this?" he barked, loud enough for the neighbors. I looked up from a card table covered in knickknacks. "This is what a goodbye tour looks like." He stood there, mouth slightly open, not used to being interrupted. "You said you'd scheduled them," I reminded him. "I just made it official." His wife, Valerie, lingered by the doorway, trying not to make eye contact. She had her purse clutched so tightly her knuckles were white. She didn't want to be here. Or maybe she did, but not like this. I didn't care. Kevin stepped forward. "You're being dramatic. We were trying to help you prepare." "For what?" I said. "For being dead? Or just being gone?" He blinked, like the thought hadn't occurred to him in either form. "We thought you'd want control over the process," he said, gesturing at the empty walls. "But this is destructive." "No, son," I said. "This is clarity." A woman with a toddler on her hip picked up a ceramic bowl from the fireplace ledge. I told her it was $10, and she nodded, slipping the money into my hand. Her child smiled at me like I was someone kind. Kevin looked at the spot where his college diploma had once hung, then turned toward me again. "You're angry?" "No," I said. "I'm awake." And I was. Awake in a way I hadn't been in years. It had started days before, with a voicemail. "Hey, Mom," Kevin had said. "So, exciting news. We've scheduled a few goodbye walkthroughs for the house. While you're still there, of course. Just gives people a better sense of space, you know. Anyway, no rush. We'll handle everything. Just be ready for a few drop-ins this week." No apology, no question. No, "Do you want this?" Just logistics. I had sat in the kitchen with the phone pressed to my chest, not crying, just listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the drip from the leaky faucet and thinking, this is what being erased sounds like. Soft, efficient, kindly worded. I didn't call him back. Instead, I walked room to room and asked myself a single question. If I died tomorrow, what would they keep? The answer was, not much. And that was what gave me strength. The next morning, I brought down the ladder and opened the attic. The boxes marked Kevin Childhood had been untouched for years. Inside, old baseballs, participation ribbons, photos of a boy with grass-stained knees and a gap-toothed smile. I took them downstairs and labeled them one by one. Because if my memories had no place here, neither did his trophies. The doorbell rang again, and I wiped my hands on my skirt. Outside, a woman in her 50s looked around nervously. "Is this the place with the glassware?" "It is," I said, holding the door open. She walked in slowly, scanning the empty walls. Feels like someone's moving. No, I said. Feels like someone's staying. On their own terms. She smiled faintly and nodded, as if she understood. When she left, I sat for a moment at the bare table, surrounded by air. No clutter. No pretending. Just me and the hum of the life I still had. The hum that sounded, now, like choice. Like a beginning. The clock in the kitchen struck noon. I didn't look at it. I just picked up the next photo, peeled the tape off the back, and put a $5 tag on it. The house was quieter without the things. Not emptier, just quieter, like a room that's finally stopped trying to explain itself. I sat on the edge of the couch, one of the last pieces of furniture left, and looked at the patchy marks on the wall where our family photos used to hang. I'd taken them down one by one the day before, dusted the frames, then packed the photos into a shoebox labeled Unwanted Narratives. It was a private joke. No one would laugh, but it made me feel like I still had my voice. The only one I didn't pack was the photo above the fireplace, the one of Walter and me in front of this very house, 1973, holding keys and grinning like fools. I hadn't smiled like that in years, maybe decades. He had paint on his jeans, and I was in a polka dot dress with swollen ankles, 5 months pregnant, and thinking the world was wide open. We bought this house with borrowed money and borrowed faith. Built shelves with our bare hands. Planted the oak tree out front when Kevin was born. Watched it grow as he grew. Measured him against it every fall. One day, Walter used to say, you'll look up and Kevin will be taller than the tree. He was wrong, of course. Trees don't forget who planted them. Kevin forgot. Not all at once. Not in a villain's way. Just little by little, the way people forget what doesn't fit the story they want to tell about themselves. The first sign was the housewarming party he didn't invite me to. Then the sudden change in tone. Mom, maybe it's time to downsize. That turned into, Mom, this place is too much for you. And then finally, Mom, we've scheduled viewings. Like it was his house. Like I was a tenant in a place I paid off with coupon books and missed vacations. Walter would have seen it coming. He always saw things I didn't. Agnes, he'd say, people treat you how you train them to. And I trained Kevin well, to expect quiet compliance, to mistake it for consent. I don't blame him exactly, but I don't excuse him either. That morning, after Kevin's little show on the porch, I took the shoebox of photos and carried it upstairs. The attic smelled of dust and insulation, and something older, maybe my mother's voice, reminding me I was worth more than a shelf. I found the thick leather binder Walter had made in the 80s, the one labeled Deeds and Papers. Inside were plastic sleeves with copies of the mortgage, tax statements, insurance, Walter's handwritten notes on the house's repairs. His blocky handwriting filled the margins. Fixed drain pipe, July 91. Insulate attic before winter. Don't trust Kevin to remember. That one made me laugh out loud. At the very back of the binder was the will. Not the new one I'd written a year ago, but the original. The one that said everything would go to Kevin when I was gone. I pulled it out, looked at it, then put it through the shredder in the guest room. The sound was sharper than expected, clean, final. Let him tour that. I took a long walk afterward, around the block twice. Neighbors nodded from porches, some stopped to chat. Spring cleaning? Mr. Delaney asked. Something like that, I said. Just making space. For what? I smiled. For whatever comes next. He nodded as if he understood, though I wasn't sure I did yet. When I got home, there was a car in the driveway. Not Kevin's, Valerie's. She sat inside with the engine running, staring at the steering wheel like it had betrayed her. I walked up to the window. She rolled it down an inch. "I didn't know he was going to say that," she said quickly. I waited. "I told him not to schedule tours without talking to you. I told him it was wrong. And yet, here we are." She looked away. "He's under pressure. Work, the kids, the house. He wants what's best for you." I raised an eyebrow. "Does he?" She sighed, finally turning off the engine. "I'm sorry, I really am. I thought maybe we could talk, you and me, woman to woman." I stepped back, opened the front door, and pointed to the sign. "Estate sale. Everything priced to go." "If you want to talk," I said, "you'll have to buy something first." She didn't come in. When I closed the door behind me, I felt lighter. Not happier. Not yet. But closer to something that might become peace. I walked back to the empty living room and sat cross-legged on the floor, just me and the shoebox, and began writing prices on the backs of my own memories. They're not leaving with me, but they're not going to be taken either. I found Walter's old hammer in the shed that morning, the handle smooth from years of his grip. It still smelled faintly of oil and wood smoke. He hadn't touched it in over 20 years, but I kept it sharp, wrapped in a rag he used to carry in his back pocket. I brought it inside and laid it across the empty windowsill, like a reminder. This house was built with hands, not handouts. By mid-morning, the porch was filling again. People had started coming without checking the hours, like the house had become a magnet for other people's needs. A woman in her 40s bought the oak dining chairs and asked if I had a story to go with them. I told her we'd sat around that table for birthdays, deaths, and arguments with the same weight. "Good chairs," I said. "They remember everything but never speak out of turn." She gave me $20 more than I asked. I didn't thank her. I just nodded. The rest of the day was a stream of people, some curious, some greedy, some kind. No one asked why I was selling. That's the thing about a woman my age. People assume your losses are natural. Loss wasn't the problem. I could live with loss. It was being handled. Around noon, a woman in a suit came up the driveway. Tight bun, clipboard, expensive watch. She introduced herself as Naomi. Said she was working with Kevin and Valerie to evaluate the property for transition. I didn't offer my hand. "I have a few questions," she said. "Just logistics. May I come in?" "No." She blinked, thrown off. "I'm sorry?" I said no. "The tours are over. But Mr. Holloway said—" "I don't answer to Mr. Holloway. And unless you're buying a teapot or a pair of boots, you're not coming inside." She tried to recover. "Well, we're hoping to align your future housing options with your current stage of life," I finished. "You mean decline?" She colored. "Of course not. We just want to help make the next chapter comfortable." "I'm quite comfortable now." She looked over my shoulder at the empty walls. "It doesn't look like it." I smiled. "That's because you don't know the difference between empty and free." She didn't try again, just left her card on the porch table as if I'd ever call. That evening, I sat in what used to be the den. No carpet now, no TV, just the smell of dust and the echo of things that used to matter. I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle I'd been saving since Walter's 70th, the year he died before we could open it. I drank it slowly. No music, no pretense. Just me and the hum of night. I thought of Kevin then. He hadn't called since his outburst. No apology. No explanation. Maybe he was waiting for me to come to my senses. Maybe he thought I was having one of those spells he liked to joke about. Mom's moods, he used to say, like I was weather, like a front that passed through and cleared on its own. He'd never asked how I'd been sleeping since Walter died. Never asked what it felt like to sit at that table alone every night. But he had opinions about how many rooms a widow needs. I finished the wine and went to the closet. The wedding dress was still there, cream-colored, now yellowed in places, the lace delicate and stubborn. I ran my fingers down the seams Walter's mother had hand-stitched, long before I was her daughter-in-law. The tag read, Agnes Holloway, May 1969. I took it from the hanger and folded it gently into a storage box. Then I wrote a price on it. Not for sale. Some things were still mine. Later that night, a neighbor girl came by, 17, maybe 18. She lingered near the porch, then finally spoke. My grandma said you're doing this to make a point. I'm doing this, I said, because I remembered I could. She nodded, looking down. I think it's kind of amazing. It wasn't. It was survival. But I appreciated the sentiment. You're welcome to look, I said, motioning toward the porch table. She picked up a porcelain figurine. Was this yours? It was my mother's. She turned it over in her hand. How much? I looked at her. You sure you want something that came from a woman who gave most of her love and all of her patience and still got treated like an obligation? The girl paused. Maybe. Maybe it's time that kind of story had a different ending. I let her take it for free. When she left, I stood on the porch for a while. The air was soft, the moon clean. The oak tree rustled its dry leaves. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself believe there was still something worth growing. The next morning, I found the last check I'd ever written to Kevin, dated 2 years ago, made out for $14,000. Business bridge loan, he'd called it. Said he'd return it within 6 months. Said it was just until his friend's startup launched. That startup folded in 3 weeks. I hadn't asked for the money back. I hadn't even brought it up. At the time, I told myself that's what mothers do. They believe. But staring at that carbon copy in my ledger, I saw it for what it really was, a slow surrender of self, one of many. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table, which was now just a folding tray and a single chair. No centerpiece, no cushions, just space. I sipped in silence. The air was clearer these days. Without the clutter, the house no longer echoed with false comfort. It spoke plainly now, like Walter used to, like I should have. At 9 sharp, the doorbell rang. It was Valerie. Not polished this time, no pearls, no gloss. She looked tired, like someone who'd been up all night trying to decide whether or not to be brave. I won't stay long, she said. I had to come. I didn't move to let her in. I told him it was wrong, she said quickly. The tours, the voicemail, all of it. I waited. He doesn't see it. He doesn't think he did anything cruel. He thinks you're being dramatic. I let the words settle. Valerie glanced around. You really cleared the place. I'm not making room for guests, I said. I'm making room for truth. She rubbed her hands together. He's furious. You've embarrassed him. He says you're dismantling the family. I almost laughed. Then it's a good thing I was the one who built it. I know how to take it apart. She looked down, silent. After a moment, I said, You didn't come to defend him. Why are you here? Valerie looked up, eyes sharp now. Because Eloise called me crying. That stopped me. She said you were selling everything. She was upset. Said she didn't understand. Said her father was acting strange and no one would tell her why. I nodded slowly. She's a child. She's 19. She still deserves the truth. Valerie stepped closer. Then tell her. Not like this. Don't let her hear the version Kevin spins. That was the first time she'd used his name without softening it. No, your son. No, my husband. Just Kevin. You think I owe her an explanation? I asked. I think she's the only one who's ever treated you like a person. That was true. Of all the people Kevin had brought into my life, Eloise was the only one who saw me. Brought me flowers on no occasion. Sat beside me on holidays not because it was polite, but because she wanted to. She'll get what's hers, I said quietly. Eventually. Valerie hesitated. Does that include you? I haven't decided. She nodded once. Then, I used to admire you, the way you carried the house after Walter, the business. Kevin never talks about it, but I know what you built. I didn't build it for admiration. No, she said, but you deserved it anyway. I didn't answer. I opened the door wider. She stepped inside, took one last look at the bare floor, and turned back to me. For what it's worth, she said, I hope you don't forgive him too quickly. And then she left. I sat for a long while after that, not out of sadness, but out of something colder. Recognition. Kevin wasn't an accident. He was the result of every time I'd chosen silence over truth. Every time I'd made it easier for him to ignore me. Every time I'd let love excuse disrespect. At noon, I called my lawyer. Hi, George, I said when he picked up. I'd like to update my will. There was a pause. Then, we talking about changes or revolutions? A little of both, I said. He chuckled. Good. I was starting to worry you'd gone soft. That afternoon, I pulled out the old silver box Walter had given me for our 25th anniversary. Inside were our letters, ticket stubs, a few pressed flowers, and the deed to the house. I ran my hand over the paper and folded it carefully into a new envelope. I labeled it with Eloise's name, not because she'd earned it, not yet, but because she hadn't turned away. Outside, the sky had turned that soft gray that comes before real weather. The wind had picked up, sending dry leaves dancing across the porch. I stood in the doorway and watched them. How easily they let go. How freely they moved. I stepped outside and left the door open behind me. I started marking the attic contents just after sunrise. I'd made a list the night before, sitting in bed with a yellow legal pad and the steady tick of the wall clock. I wrote down every box I could remember: baby clothes, wedding china, Kevin's trophies, Christmas stuff, old lights probably dead, and beside each, a price or a verdict: keep, sell, burn. By the time the light crept through the hallway, I was already pulling the ladder down and tying back my hair. The air up there was thick, the kind that clings to old paper and insulation. I opened a small window near the gable to let the dust escape. It felt like exorcism. The first box was Kevin's. I knew the handwriting on the label. His own, written at 13 in permanent marker, thick and hopeful. My stuff do not touch. I touched. Inside. A cracked plastic trophy for most improved. A letter jacket sleeve with the patches half ripped from age, 3 baseballs in a sock, and a birthday card I'd given him at 15. I remembered the card. It had a dog on it. I'd written, "You don't owe the world anything, son. Just be good, and you'll have given enough." He hadn't kept many of my words, but he'd kept that card. I stared at it for a long time, then put it aside. Not for the sale, not for sentiment. Just for remembering. A marker of a moment when I believed he still listened. The rest I priced. The Christmas box was next. Ornaments from the first tree Walter and I bought. Brittle strings of gold tinsel. 3 broken snow globes that never made it back into the cabinet. One of them had Eloise's name painted on it. She was 5 when we made it together. She'd cried when it cracked. Kevin said, "It's just junk, Mom," and tossed it in a drawer. I priced it all. Nothing over $5. By noon, I'd made 4 trips up and down the ladder. My knees barked with every step, but I didn't stop. There was a rhythm in the clearing, like breath, like prayer. Each labeled box was another inch of space between me and the version of myself that had kept waiting for someone to say thank you. At 2, I got a call from George. "Will's updated," he said. "I followed your instructions exactly. Trust fund in Eloise's name, equal installments at 25, 30, and 35. Kevin's name is removed." "Good," I said. "I assume he doesn't know yet?" "He'll find out when it matters." George was quiet for a moment. Then, with that dry gentleness only lawyers and widowers seem to master, he asked, "Are you all right, Agnes?" "I'm breathing," I said. "More than I can say for the last 10 years. He didn't press, just said he'd file everything Monday and send me copies. After I hung up, I stood in the hallway and looked at the closed attic door. The house felt different now. Not lighter, exactly. Not yet. But honest. Like it had been holding its breath for years and finally exhaled. Later that afternoon, a woman I didn't recognize stopped by. Mid-60s, maybe. Wind-chapped hands. Eyes that had seen loss. She held up a flyer she'd found at the community center. The one I'd tacked up the day after the first sale. Estate clearance. Cash only. Items priced for departure. "You're the woman cleaning house," she said. "I am." She looked past me into the near-empty living room. "You losing someone?" I shook my head. "Already lost. Now I'm just naming it." She didn't ask what that meant. Just stepped inside and started sorting through the books I'd stacked by the stairs. She chose 2. A collection of Appalachian folktales and a copy of The Secret Garden. Paid in exact bills. No small talk. But before she left, she turned to me and said, "Sometimes we wait too long to make the cut." I nodded. "Sometimes we don't know there's a knife in our hand." After she left, I sat on the porch and watched the oak tree. Its leaves were coming down faster now, each one a small farewell. I thought of Walter again, not his absence, but his presence. The way he fixed things without fuss. The way he held a room just by standing in it. "You'd laugh at me now," I said aloud. "Or maybe you wouldn't." The porch creaked, as if in response. I pulled out the last box I hadn't marked. It was small, taped shut, labeled simply, "Agnes, private." I didn't remember packing it. Maybe I'd been younger. Maybe I knew this day would come. Inside, my wedding ring, an envelope of letters I never sent, and a single photo of me, alone, by the sea. I hadn't seen that photo in years. I held it close and whispered to no one, "She's not gone." Then I marked the box, "Keep," for wherever I go next. By Saturday evening, the porch had emptied. The last of the porcelain went to a man buying for his daughter's first apartment. The cedar chest went to a couple who asked if it had stories. I said yes, but they'd have to make their own. They paid in cash and didn't haggle. I respected that. I took down the sign. Not because I was done, but because what remained wasn't for sale. What was left belonged to me now, not in the legal sense, but in the quiet way some things do when you've fought to keep them. That night, I made soup from scratch. It wasn't about hunger. It was about ritual. The way my mother used to say, You stir counterclockwise to take the bitterness out. She believed in things like that. Small movements with meaning. I sat at the kitchen tray with a chipped bowl and a single spoon and thought about Kevin. About all the dinners we'd shared in this house. His picky phases. His allergies we discovered too late. The years he refused to sit next to Walter because he was mad about being grounded. It's funny what stays. Not the speeches, not the milestones. Just the way someone held their fork. The pause before they spoke. The next morning, I took out the box of Eloise's drawings. I'd kept them without ceremony, stored in a crate marked Misk. But they were treasures. Crayon scrawls of houses with crooked roofs and dogs with 6 legs. One drawing showed me holding her hand beside an enormous sun. Underneath, in her wobbly script, it said, "Grammy is the sun." I stared at that for a long time. Not because it was true, but because at some point I stopped believing anyone saw me that way. Somewhere between Kevin's promotions and his stiff hugs, I'd become furniture, part of the structure, useful, solid, invisible. But Eloise hadn't seen me that way, and now, with so little left in the house, her drawings felt like beams. Not sentimental, not fragile, just real. I picked the best 3 and framed them in the empty spots where Kevin's diplomas used to hang. The wall looked better already. Around noon, Eloise called. "Grammy?" Her voice was breathless. "Can I come over?" "Yes, baby, always." She arrived 15 minutes later, wearing a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big and hair pulled into a messy bun. No makeup, no performance. Just a girl who needed truth. She stepped inside, looked around, and froze. "It's really all gone." I nodded. She walked slowly through the house, eyes scanning the emptiness. "It feels strange." "Better strange than dishonest," I said. She turned to me. "Why?" I sat on the floor and motioned for her to join me. She did, cross-legged like she used to when she was small. "Because," I said, "when people decide you're no longer the one holding the map, they start building roads you didn't choose. Kevin didn't just schedule viewings, Eloise. He started writing me out of the story." She looked down, blinking fast. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Dad said you were just cleaning out, making space." "I am, but not for strangers." She sat quiet for a while. Then, "He said you were being dramatic, that you weren't well." I smiled. "He's right. I'm unwell from decades of silence. But I'm recovering fast." She laughed a little, then leaned into me. "I don't want you to go," she said. "I'm not going. I'm just going somewhere that wants me." We sat like that for a long time, the kind of silence that heals instead of hollows. Before she left, I gave her the box of her drawings. "These are yours," I said. "I'm just the keeper." She hugged me tight. "You're more than that." I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that in years past. But I let her hold on as long as she needed. After she left, I looked around the house again. No couch, no TV, no clutter. But there was a framed sun on the wall. And somehow, that was enough for now. The Sunday morning sky was that particular shade of gray that makes the world feel paused. Even the birds were quiet. I brewed tea slowly, deliberately, as if each step mattered more now that I did things only for myself. The house echoed differently these days. Not hollow, just honest. There was nothing to distract me anymore. No busy work, no noise. Just the sound of my own breath and the occasional creak of the floor, like the house was stretching after a long nap. I sat at the kitchen tray with my tea and the notebook I'd started the night Kevin left his voicemail. On the first page, in bold ink, I'd written, Agnes Holloway does not disappear. Every page after that was a plan. Not for revenge, not for spectacle, just for reclamation. That morning, I added a new entry. Call broker. List house myself. I'd decided. If my son wanted to walk strangers through my life while I was still standing in it, then fine. I'd walk them through first. On my terms. With my story, not his. I called the agency Walter and I used to work with when we refinanced back in '92. A woman named Michelle answered. She sounded young, but not careless. I'm thinking of listing, I said, but I won't deal with children, mine or yours. She laughed softly. Understood, ma'am. We work directly with owners. Good. I'll want full control, no open houses without my presence, and no contact with family unless I initiate it. There was a pause. Sounds like you've got history. Everyone my age does. Most just lie about it. Michelle promised to send over the paperwork. I gave her the address and hung up, feeling something shift in my chest. Not bitterness, but momentum. At noon, I baked. I hadn't in years. Walter used to say my peach pie could forgive any sin. That was a lie, of course. No dessert heals betrayal. But baking reminded me who I used to be before everything became quiet obligation. The scent filled the house, warm, defiant. I left the pie on the cooling rack, untouched. That afternoon, Kevin finally called. I let it ring twice before picking up. Mom. His voice was tense. We need to talk. We are talking. Not like this. I waited. What are you doing? Valerie said you've gutted the house. She's mistaken. I've restored it. To what? He snapped. It looks like an abandoned shelter. No, it looks like a place that stopped lying to itself. He exhaled sharply. You're being dramatic. Again? I'm serious. You're making decisions that affect the family. Eloise is upset. Valerie's embarrassed. Do you even care what this looks like to people? I care what it looks like to me. There was a pause. Then he said, You're selling, aren't you? Yes. You can't just... I can, I interrupted. I already spoke to a broker. I'll be handling the sale. He laughed bitterly. You're going to make a mess of this. You don't know the process. You need guidance. No, I said. You need control. I need freedom. Where will you even go? Wherever I please. He scoffed. This is selfish. I nearly laughed. Kevin, I spent 40 years making space for everyone else. I cooked through grief, smiled through silence, wrote checks instead of boundaries. If this is selfish, I welcome the title. He said nothing. I'm not angry, I added. But I am done. The line was quiet for a long time. Then quietly, Don't expect help when it all falls apart? I never did. I hung up. Afterward, I stood at the window and watched a young couple walk past. She held his elbow. He carried a canvas tote with flowers sticking out. They looked soft, not yet bruised by time or disappointment. I hoped they'd stay that way. The pie had cooled. I wrapped it in foil and walked it across the street to Mr. Delaney, who hadn't stopped waving from his porch since the first sale. For you, I said. He raised an eyebrow. What's the occasion? I'm leaving soon. He nodded. That so? It is. He took the pie. You'll be missed. I smiled. Not by everyone. He grinned. Then you're doing it right. The sun dipped behind the trees, and the house behind me stood silent. But it wasn't sad. It was ready. So was I. The next day, I went through the closets. Not the obvious ones, the hallway or bedroom, but the small one in the back room, the one Kevin used to call the cave. It had no light switch, only a dangling chain I never replaced after Walter died. I pulled it now and stood blinking as the bulb flickered on. Inside, 3 coats I hadn't worn since the funeral, a box of old receipts, and a long garment bag labeled Valerie Mother's Dress. I stared at it for a moment, unsure why it had ended up in my house, forgotten. I unzipped it carefully. Inside was a cream-colored dress with delicate beading. Clearly expensive, clearly not mine. It looked barely worn. On top of the box beside it, a folded note. "Can you store this for a bit? Closet's too full. We'll pick up soon. V." I ran my fingers over the date. 8 years ago. I almost laughed. They'd been using my space long before they tried to take my house, always inching in, always assuming I'd hold the overflow. I zipped the bag shut and placed it by the front door, then wrote a note of my own. "Storage closed. Come collect what's yours." By mid-morning, Michelle, the broker, arrived. She was younger than I'd expected, late 30s, early 40s, but sharp. No small talk, just a firm handshake, and eyes that took in the stripped-down house with interest, not judgment. "Open floor plan," she noted, walking through the front room. "Original woodwork, great bones. People will fight over this." "Let them," I said. She paused at the hearth. "Mind if I ask why you're selling?" "Freedom," I said. "It's undervalued lately." She smiled, but didn't push. I brought the paperwork. We sat at the kitchen tray, her with her tablet, me with a pen, and went through the listing agreement. I asked questions. She answered clearly. She didn't once use the word transition. When we finished, she gathered her things. "Do you want a coming soon sign?" "No," I said. "When it's ready, it's ready." Michelle nodded. "You're the boss." I liked her for that. After she left, I swept the floor, not because it needed it, but because it felt like a goodbye gesture. As I passed the entryway, I saw the garment bag still waiting. It didn't feel heavy, but it felt full of something sour. I called Valerie. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello? There's a dress here. Yours. 8 years unclaimed." "Oh," she said. "Right. I forgot it was there." "I didn't." There was a pause. "Do you want me to pick it up?" "I want it out of the house. Whether it's you or someone else, I don't care." Another pause. "Okay. I'll come by tonight." I hung up without another word. That afternoon, I began packing the last of the china. Not for sale, not for storage. For keeping. A small box labeled "Just Enough." 2 plates, 2 mugs, 1 teapot. I wrapped each piece in old dish towels and set them aside. As the sun dropped, I made a list. Items to bring, items to leave, people to inform, people to forget. It was clean work. Not cruel, just clean. At 7:30, Valerie rang the bell. She didn't come inside. She took the garment bag from the porch and hesitated. "I never meant—" "You don't have to explain," I said. "But I want to." I looked at her. "Then make it count." She shifted. "I never thought it would come to this. You and Kevin." "The house? It didn't come to this. It was always coming. You just didn't expect I'd notice." She looked down. "You're right." I waited. "He's angry," she added. "Mostly at himself, but he won't say it. That's his problem." "I know." She stood quietly for a moment. Then, "What do you need from me?" "Nothing," I said. "Which is the gift?" She nodded, holding the dress like a question she'd never answer. "I wish it had been different," she said. "It still can be," I replied. "Just not here." She left without another word. When the door closed, I leaned against it and exhaled. Not from grief, not from pain, from the weight of something returned. The house was quiet again, not paused, just waiting. And for once, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The next morning, I mailed the keys to George, my lawyer, with a short note. Hold until sale closes. Do not give copies to family. I sealed the envelope and walked it down to the corner box myself. The act felt final. Not angry, just solid, like the clink of a drawer shutting on something long overdue. Back home, I stood in the middle of the bedroom and looked around. The walls were bare, the closet almost empty. My suitcase sat open on the bed, half packed. I'd bought it the day before, a sturdy brown one with wheels and a lock, the kind made for moving forward. On the dresser, 3 items remained: my reading glasses, a watch Walter gave me in 1981, and a letter I hadn't opened yet. Eloise's handwriting, addressed carefully. I sat and read it slowly. Dear Grammy, I don't know how to say this right, but I'll try. I'm proud of you. I know that probably sounds backwards, like I'm supposed to be the one earning that. But I mean it. I watch how you move through this like you're finally telling the truth, and it makes me feel like maybe I can too someday. Whatever comes next, I hope you know you're not alone. Not really. I see you. I always have. Love, Eloise. I folded the letter and placed it in my suitcase, on top of the clothes. It was the only thing I'd take from this house that couldn't be replaced. That afternoon, Kevin showed up. No warning, no call. Just the sound of tires on gravel and his heavy footsteps on the porch. I didn't open the door. He knocked once, then twice. Mom. I didn't answer. I just want to talk. Still nothing. He paused, then said, Fine. You want silence? You've got it. I watched through the peephole as he turned and walked back to the car, shoulders stiff, jaw tight. For a moment I felt the old instinct, to follow, to soften, to mend. But I stayed still. Some wounds deserve their shape. When he drove off, I opened the door to let in the breeze. It smelled like dry leaves and faint smoke from a neighbor's chimney, the kind of air that says something is ending, but not badly, just naturally. I made tea and sat at the tray by the window, watching the oak tree. It had lost most of its leaves now. Only a few clung to the top, stubborn and out of season. I liked them. Tomorrow, the photographer would come for the listing. Michelle had arranged everything. The house would look spare, clean, unburdened, like me. I finished my tea and carried the cup to the sink. Washed it, dried it, placed it in the box labeled just enough. 1 plate, 1 cup, 1 life. The doorbell rang once more that evening. I opened it without hesitation. Eloise. No announcement, no performance, just her, holding a small brown envelope. I made something, she said. Inside, a drawing of the house. Not how it looked now, but how she remembered it. With light in the windows, a garden out front, and me standing at the door. I wanted you to have it, she said. I framed it that night, hung it by the door I'd soon be walking out of, and somehow that made it feel right. The photographer arrived promptly at 10 the next morning. Young, polite, unsure of how to speak to someone like me, someone who looked like the past, but was firmly done with it. He stepped inside, looked around at the empty rooms, the clean walls, the lone framed drawing by the door. Did you just move out? He asked. Not yet, I said, but I'm already gone. He blinked, unsure if it was a joke. I didn't help him. He moved from room to room, adjusting angles, lowering his lens to catch the beams of light that still found their way in. It's a beautiful space, he said eventually. It was. He hesitated. Should I remove the picture near the door for the shot? No. Leave it. That's the only thing that still tells the truth. He nodded and didn't ask again. After he left, I sat by the window with a cup of reheated tea and listened to the quiet creak of the house. It was strange how it still seemed to breathe. Even now, stripped of its memories, it had a pulse. It wasn't haunted, just tired. Like me. I'd made peace with that. The phone rang just after noon. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. Eventually, I picked up. Mom. Kevin's voice, low, tight. I heard the house is listed. You heard right. Why? I already answered that. This is insane. No, this is late. There was silence. Then, what are you even going to do? Live out of a suitcase? Bounce around motels? I have plans. What kind of plans? The kind that don't include being pitied in my own home. His voice sharpened. Do you think this punishes me? Is that what this is about? I stood and walked to the kitchen. You keep using that word, punishment. Like this is something I've done to you? Kevin, I sold your trophies. I burned the old letters. I gave away the rug you used to nap on, not to hurt you, to free myself. You're rewriting everything, he snapped. No, I said quietly. I'm just finally writing my part. He didn't reply. I poured the last of the tea into the sink and rinsed the cup. You should go home. I am home, he said. This is my home too. No, I corrected. It used to be. You left a long time ago. You just forgot to pack your entitlement. I hung up before he could answer. That afternoon, I began packing the final box. The one labeled Leave Behind. Inside, a photo of our wedding day, Walter's fishing hat, the armchair where I held Kevin after his first nightmare, the cracked teacup I used every morning after he left for college. I closed the lid gently. No anger, no tears, just a steady hand, and the knowledge that some things are only meant to stay until you're strong enough to walk without them. That night, I sat outside under the porch light with a blanket and Eloise's drawing on my lap. The stars were soft, the kind of quiet you don't notice when you're too full of noise. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a woman being left behind. I felt like a woman standing up. The day I met with the notary, the sky was washed with that late autumn blue that feels honest. No haze, no sentiment. Just clean light. I dressed plainly, gray coat, low heels, the same purse I carried when Walter and I signed the mortgage for the house in 1973. The office was downtown, above a hardware store that still sold things one drawer at a time. I liked that. Things that lasted. George met me in the lobby, his glasses low on his nose, a folder tucked under his arm. You ready? He asked. Too ready, I said. He led me into a narrow room with a polished oak table and thick drapes that muffled the outside world. The notary sat waiting. Older woman, professional but warm, the kind who looked you in the eye and didn't pretend to be in a hurry. We went over the documents line by line. The house, to be sold, proceeds distributed per instruction. The trust, in Eloise's name, untouchable by her parents, released in 3 stages with no oversight but her own. The will, updated, signed, final. And your son? The notary asked gently, as if offering me one last chance to change my mind. Excluded, I said. No drama. Just fact. She nodded. Would you like to attach a letter? Some people do. I looked at George. You wrote one, he said quietly. Last week. I had. On cream stationery. 3 pages, sealed. It's with the documents, he added. Delivered when appropriate. I signed the last page. My hand didn't shake. When it was done, I thanked them both, stood, and walked out into the light. The street smelled like cold metal and wood smoke. I felt taller than I had in months. On the way home, I stopped at the nursery. Something small, I told the girl at the counter. Something that travels well. She brought me a potted rosemary plant, sturdy, fragrant, rooted. It means remembrance, she said. I'll take it. Back at the house, I placed the rosemary by the sink. The scent filled the kitchen instantly, sharper than any perfume. It smelled like the garden Walter never finished. Like the evenings I used to cook while Kevin complained about homework and Eloise built cities out of napkins and spoons. It smelled like what I still had. That evening, Michelle called. We've got offers already, she said. 3 of them, one's over asking. I smiled. Choose the couple with the dog. She laughed. You didn't even see them. I don't need to. I heard her scribble something. I'll start paperwork. And Michelle, I said before she could hang up. Don't stage the house. Don't dress it up. Sell it bare. Let them see what it is. Understood. When I hung up, I walked through the house one last time. Not with grief, not with nostalgia. With clarity. The empty hallway where Kevin once ran with a paper crown on his head. The bathroom where I soaked Eloise's scraped knees. The quiet corner where Walter used to read. All of it still here, but none of it mine anymore. And that was okay. I went to the back step, sat with the rosemary in my lap, and waited for the moon to rise. I didn't need more time. I just needed the door to stay open long enough for me to walk through it. I didn't sleep that night, not out of worry. There was nothing left to worry about. But something in my body resisted closing its eyes. Like it knew this house, this space, would never hold me again quite the same way. So I sat in the armchair by the front window wrapped in a shawl, watching the dark press against the glass. At 5 a.m, I stood up, made tea, and packed the last 2 boxes. One labeled take, one labeled leave. The take box held little. My mother's comb, the photo of me by the sea, Eloise's letter, the framed drawing, the rosemary, and Walter's watch, now wrapped in one of his old handkerchiefs. It hadn't ticked in years, but it didn't need to. I remembered the sound well enough. The leave box was heavier. Old tax forms, receipts, half-finished projects. Kevin's baby book, empty after page 3. A note he once wrote in high school. Mom, can I have $20? I'll pay you back this time, promise. He hadn't. I sealed the box, wrote no return address on the side, and carried it to the basement. Set it down gently next to the fuse box and the rusted shelf of leftover paint cans. I wouldn't take bitterness with me, but I wouldn't carry amnesia either. When the sun rose, I dressed in a soft blue sweater, the one Walter said made me look like a sky that wouldn't storm. I tied my hair back. No makeup, no jewelry. The house didn't need a show. At 9, the agent arrived with a clipboard and the first round of papers. We sat outside on the porch to sign. Closing's scheduled for next week, she said. Cash buyer. They're moving fast. So am I. She looked at me. You sure you don't want to wait? Stay through the holidays? I shook my head. I've done enough waiting. After she left, I went inside for the last time. I walked through each room slowly, not touching anything, not pausing, just seeing. In the kitchen, I looked at the spot on the wall where Kevin had drawn in crayon, age 5, a crooked, smiley face I never painted over. I smiled at it now, not with regret, with recognition. In the garden, I knelt by the rose bush Walter had planted for our anniversary. Tiny, frail now, but still reaching. I dug around it with my hands, careful, patient. Lifted it out with roots intact. Placed it in a pot I'd saved for this moment. "You're coming with me," I said. "We're not done yet." I left the key on the counter in an envelope for Michelle. Next to it, I left a folded piece of paper. "If you're reading this and standing in my kitchen, welcome." This house held a full life, some of it joyful, some of it quiet, some of it nearly lost. Take care of it. Listen when it creaks. Let the windows stay open longer than they should. This place deserves honesty. Be kind to it. And to yourself. I didn't sign it. At the door, I turned once, only once, and let the silence wrap around me. Then I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and did not look back. The pot with the rose bush sat in the passenger seat. The suitcase was in the trunk. I drove slowly at first, then faster, then with purpose. Not to escape, just to arrive. Somewhere along the coastal highway, I pulled over and walked toward the water. The sea looked the same as the photo, wide, honest, patient. I took off my shoes, let the cold rush up my ankles. The wind tugged at my sweater. I breathed. It smelled nothing like the house, and everything like home. The motel was nothing special. Wood-paneled walls, a bed that creaked, a kitchenette with a humming fridge. But the window faced west, and that was enough for me. Every evening, the light poured in like forgiveness. It didn't ask who I'd been or what I'd given away. It just filled the room. I stayed there for 3 days. I walked every morning, slow, steady, along sidewalks cracked with time. No one knew me. No one expected anything. I could have been anyone. A widow on vacation, a woman passing through, a grandmother with secrets. I liked that. I drank my coffee at a diner near the water. The waitress learned my name on day 2. "Agnes," she said with a smile. "You want your usual?" "Not yet," I replied. "I'm still deciding who I am here." She laughed, not unkindly. "Well, let me know when you figure it out. We've got specials for all kinds of people." On the 3rd morning, I found a small apartment listing posted in the window of a bookstore. 1 bedroom, upstairs, partial ocean view. I called the number. The woman who answered had a voice like salt and matches. "It's quiet," she said. "Old plumbing, no elevator." "You sure you want it?" "I'm sure." She asked nothing else. Just gave me the address. I walked there after lunch, up 2 flights of uneven stairs. The door was green, peeling. The smell inside was faintly musty, but not unpleasant, like something waiting to be aired out. The windows faced the water. You could only see the ocean if you leaned left, but that was enough. I stood there a long time, then wrote the woman a check for the deposit. When I returned to the motel, the receptionist gave me a look. "Checking out?" "Soon," I said. "One more night." That evening, I unpacked my rosemary, set it on the windowsill, and sat cross-legged on the motel bed. I called Eloise. She answered on the first ring. "Grammy? I wanted to hear your voice. Where are you?" "Near the ocean." "Are you okay?" "I'm good. I'm somewhere I chose." She was quiet. Then, "Dad's mad." "I know. He said you abandoned us." "I didn't," I said. "I just stopped abandoning myself." "I miss you." "I miss you too. Can I come visit?" I smiled. "Yes. But not until you ask yourself why you want to. Not because you feel sorry. Not because someone sends you." "Okay," she whispered. "I'll earn it." You already have. I hung up and sat still for a while, letting the quiet stretch. No regrets, just breath. That night, I slept without dreams. The next day, I moved in. The landlady handed me the keys and said, "It's yours until you say otherwise." I liked that phrasing. Nothing permanent, nothing borrowed. I spent the afternoon placing my few things: the framed drawing near the door, the watch on the nightstand, the photo by the sea above the sink. When I finished, I stood in the center of the room and exhaled. No ghosts, no lists, no noise, just a woman choosing herself for the first time in a very long time. The first week in the apartment passed quietly, like water slipping through cupped hands. Nothing loud, nothing grand. Just the steady rhythm of mornings and evenings, of small rituals reclaimed. I bought groceries in canvas bags I carried myself. I cooked simple meals. I wrote notes to no one, folded them, and left them in drawers for a future version of me to find. Notes like, "You are not a burden, and this room owes you nothing. That's why it feels safe." The apartment creaked in familiar places, above the bathroom sink, along the bedroom wall. But they weren't warnings. They were reminders. This place wasn't polished. It wasn't waiting to impress. It was just standing, like me. On the 6th evening, I took a walk toward the pier. The sky was pale, fading pink, wind soft against my cheeks. I wore Walter's old cardigan, the one he always said smelled like coffee and work. It still did. At the end of the boardwalk, there was a bench. I sat. No destination, no reason, just stillness. A woman approached a few minutes later, 60-ish, hair silver but defiant. She wore jeans and a denim jacket with frayed cuffs. She glanced at me, then nodded. Not a greeting, a recognition. "Nice night," she said. "It is." She sat without asking, which I appreciated. "Moved here recently?" she asked. "Yes." "Me too, from Ohio." "From Silence," I said. She looked at me, smiled. "Tougher state." We didn't speak for a while, just sat with the wind and the dusk. Eventually, she stood and said, "There's a group of us, women. We meet Thursdays. We talk. No advice. Just truth. If you ever want a chair, there's one." She didn't wait for an answer. Just walked away, hands in her pockets. That night, I wrote another note. "You are not a wife here. You are not a mother here. You are not a caretaker. You are just a woman. That is enough." I placed it inside the framed drawing Eloise had made, a secret folded behind sunshine. The next morning, I checked the mail for the first time. Nothing yet. No ads, no bills, no apologies. At noon, I got a call from George. "Final paperwork's done," he said. "Funds are being transferred. House is no longer yours." I felt the words settle in my chest like soft dust. "Do you want me to send copies?" he asked. "No," I said. "Let it stay closed." "Understood." He hesitated. Then, "Kevin called, twice. I didn't answer." "You don't have to." He sounded lost. "I know. You still want me to send the letter?" "Yes. I'll take care of it." After the call, I sat with the quiet. The letter I'd written to Kevin wasn't cruel. It wasn't even angry. It was plain. A list, really. You took space I never offered. You confused my endurance for approval. You believed silence was permission. It wasn't. This isn't punishment, it's repair. You will not inherit what you do not value. No signature, just my handwriting. That evening, I opened the windows and let the sea air in. It was colder now. I wrapped myself in a blanket and made tea in the chipped mug I'd brought from the house. I drank it slowly. Outside, the world moved on. Cars, waves, someone arguing in the alley. None of it needed me. I was not the center of anything anymore. And that, somehow, was the most peaceful feeling I'd ever known. I thought of Eloise. Wondered if she'd call again. Wondered if she was ready. I hoped so. But I wouldn't wait for her. I wouldn't wait for anyone. Not anymore. It was a Thursday when I finally went. Not to run, not to confront. Just to sit in a room with other women who knew what it meant to be quiet too long. I wore simple clothes, flat shoes, soft blouse, a cardigan I'd mended myself. No perfume, no makeup. I didn't want to perform. The meeting was held in a church basement, chairs in a loose circle, no sign-in sheets, no name tags. Just presence. The woman from the pier was there. She smiled when she saw me, but didn't rush over. She let me find my place, let me earn my seat without attention. I liked her for that. Someone began by reading a quote. Something about truth not being loud, only clear. Then they went around the circle. Each woman spoke without interruption. One had left a marriage after 40 years. One was raising her grandchild because her daughter couldn't. One hadn't spoken to her sister in 12 years and didn't plan to. There was no shame in their voices, just tired honesty. When it was my turn, I didn't clear my throat. I didn't fumble. I sold my house, I said. My son tried to walk strangers through it while I was still living in it. A few of them chuckled, not at me, but in understanding. I didn't stop him with yelling. I stopped him with a garage sale. I priced their trophies, I cleared the rooms, and I left. One woman nodded slowly. Sounds like freedom. More like recovery, I said. Freedom's loud. This is quieter, but it's mine. I didn't say more. I didn't need to. After the meeting, the woman from the pier walked me to the door. You're staying? I am. Good. We didn't exchange phone numbers. There was no performance of new friendship, just a nod. Like she saw the full weight of me and decided it was welcome. I walked home slow, hands in pockets, the air cool against my face. Back in the apartment, I watered the rosemary. I reread Eloise's letter. I made toast and sat cross-legged on the bed like I used to when I was young and waiting for the world to begin. But I wasn't waiting now. I wasn't hoping someone would come around or explain or fix it. I was simply here, alive. One woman, one life. And that was enough. If this story found you, maybe you needed it. Maybe you're sitting in a room full of things that no longer hold you. Maybe someone has mistaken your silence for surrender. Maybe you've been waiting for a door to open from the outside. This is your sign to build your own key. Don't wait for permission to start again. Start with a drawer. Start with a single truth. Start now, and if it moved you, share it. Someone else might be waiting too.